If anyone here has been following this channel for a long time, you'll know that I covered an infection that a lot of people out there refer to as Morgellons. I'm not going to go back over all the information in this video because that would be really redundant, but it also works as a dumbass repellent because anyone truly interested in this is going to do the research on their own. And then the morons won't get it and they'll move on, and that's fine. There's only so much you can do. I mean, I'm not going to spend all my time going back and answering questions that people are asking underneath this video about all the other videos. The information is out there, right? I will, however, go over a few physical characteristics of this infection. So a majority of the people, like 60 to 70% of people afflicted with Morgellons, have artificial tinnitus. It affects each person differently. On some people, it's practically invisible. On others, it can cause open sores that doctors will attempt to blame on scratching. You know, even if they are totally out of the reach of the person, like in the middle of their back. Most people with Morgellons have no idea that they even have it. It is blamed on other things, and most of these people believe whatever they're told by their doctor. It can appear as dry skin. It can show up in specific areas, like from the calves down to the ankles, or on the backs of people's arms, or on the back, or on the face. It can look like a red rash that seems to make the pores dilate. It can look like dandruff, or even dandruff on the face or on the eyebrows. Once it makes its way into the sinuses, the gut, and then ultimately enters the lymphatic system, it can cause back pain, joint pain, and a myriad of other symptoms. Again, with most people being none the wiser, and generally blaming each symptom on something else. For example, a person may believe that they have dandruff, and they may also believe that they have an allergy that causes skin itching and rash. And then they might also believe that they have arthritis, without ever understanding that all three issues were caused by the same thing. This happens all the time. Many people deal with red, black, and blue fibers within their body or within the biofilm on their body, and the medical shills ran out in droves back in the day to tell people that it was just clothing fibers, but this is an absolute 100% lie. I have seen in person microscope images of these fibers wrapped up and tangled inside the roots of hairs that were just pulled out. Because this garbage invades the pores and the hair follicles, I have seen these fibers in absolutely impossible places. There has also been a lot of research done about this fungus and bacteria-based network being sensitive to 60 Hertz power, EMF, RF, ELF, etc., as many bacteria and fungus can and will propagate faster when exposed to certain frequencies, or become irritated when in the proximity of certain frequencies. This causes the fungus and or the bacteria to become irritated, which in turn makes the person's skin become irritated. So suddenly the person may believe that they are having an allergic reaction, but all the while it was something else entirely. This can help someone understand something like a peanut allergy, and it may help people understand why these conditions do not exist in certain countries, like peanut allergies. But with this brief overview, I want to focus on just a couple symptoms of this fungal bacterial system, which is relatively common in those afflicted with this. One of these symptoms is what I referred to in the past as alligator skin. This may look like darker, thicker areas of skin on the body or face. It may look like someone has over-tanned in that area, or it may look like sun damage. It looks and feels thicker. It may feel tighter than the rest of the person's skin, or it may even be uncomfortable. What most people don't know is that this can come off, and it really isn't the person's skin. With the proper treatment, it eventually rolls and peels off the body. So another symptom that I want to talk about here are what appears to be markings on the skin. Again, I need to state that this doesn't happen to everyone who has this, but many people out there begin to notice something that appears to be markings on their skin. It can even look like writing. They usually first notice this in photos of themselves or photos of someone else. And it can appear like it is almost scar tissue, and its visibility usually depends on lighting and angle. So this is not uncommon, and there are many videos, blogs, and forum posts out there where people are pointing this out on photos of themselves or other people. you may see an X or a number 3 or like a number 7 or a number 4 or whatever. It just looks like a number, right? Seeing what appears to be a number 3 and various letters and numbers on the skin. Now, with all that said, I want to squash an idea before I have to read about it in the comments. This is not dermatographia. It is not. Dermatographia is something completely different. And I need to say that before people try to put that in the comments. What I am talking about, this writing on the skin, it actually reminds me more of what I used to see in the woods. You know, I spent my childhood outside, and a lot of the time I was out in the woods riding or walking, and it wasn't uncommon to walk up on a leaf or a tree or a piece of wood that looked like it had writing on it. You know, seeing what looked like a number 3 was very common. This happened from insects and different fungus. And I'm going to show you a piece of wood that I found in my backyard that actually has this. So I didn't just bring this in my home. I put it in the oven for about 3 hours at about 400 degrees first. I want to show you that this has very, very similar marks. First I noticed these, right? And when you step back from these, you can see what looks like almost lettering. Then I found these, and as you can see, this looks like a sideways 3 here, or an M. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is not from, you know, regular wood. This is from insects or fungus causing this. Here's another photo of it, and you can see it coming through here, forming, coming up here, forming, all of this. You see this on leaves. You see it on anywhere. I just want to show you an example of it before we move on. It is not the dermatographia that people talk about. Now, there are a handful of people out there who claim to have Morgellons from pre-1999. However, the explosion in cases happened between 1999 and 2000 and then afterwards. I recall reading about it for the first time. I was on a forum way back, and a woman had gone on a canoe trip with her boyfriend to Kentucky, I believe, or Tennessee, and she came back with Morgellons and was trying to figure it out. Very, very strange. After the year 2000, the number of cases went to astronomical numbers. Doctors would not admit it, and many people were frustrated and angered to walk out of doctors' offices with zero help, or worse, some were diagnosed with delusional disorder, for real. And why was that happening? Because for some reason, doctors were not allowed to admit to this condition. They still aren't. And when they did, they faced being reviewed, messed with, given psychiatric evaluations, or losing their medical license. So they learned real quick. You have to also keep in mind that these cases exploded in number right when persistent contrails began to be seen and documented all over the nation. And the real way to understand the world you live in is understanding patterns, not getting on your knees to the forces out there promoting the idea of coincidence. It doesn't matter what subject you're looking at. Once you get beyond one coincidence, it is no coincidence. Now, many people affected with Morgellons end up dealing with personality changes and brain fog, chronic fatigue. Their thoughts are scattered, obsessive ideas that they never had before, all these types of symptoms. And they're different. Like I said, they are different for everybody. So you can't say, well, I've got it, I don't have that. Certain people do. 60 to 70% have artificial tinnitus. And while we're on the subject of fungus and bacteria and heading for something bigger, and we are heading for something bigger, let me bring up something of great importance. And I'm talking about crazy cat people. Most people out there think that the crazy woman down the street with 20 cats just happens to be crazy, and her craziness has driven her to have 20 cats. But that most likely isn't the case. And here is where you ask why. Because crazy cat person syndrome is real. And animals and people who are infected with this have their brains rewired by the infection. It changes their behavior, and it causes them to be attracted to things that they were never attracted to before. This happens in mice as well, and it is very easy to explain with mice. So I will use that as the prime example. The cat carries the infection with them, and within their urine and their feces. When mice come into contact with it, it begins the same type of cycle and infects the mouse, but it does something special. Mice are naturally repelled by cat urine or feces. That keeps them alive. You're supposed to run from predators, but when a mouse is infected, it literally rewires the brain so that the smell of cat urine and cat feces becomes an attraction to the mice, not a repellent. This causes the mouse to be caught by the cat. The cat then becomes infected by the parasite, and it begins the cycle again within the new cat or host. This is very similar to what we see in different fungal infections. Ants that will be driven to do something that they don't normally do. This is very similar to the type of behavior we have seen in people with Morgellons infections. They can have interests that they never had before, or become attracted to people that they were never attracted to before. And you have to remember that many people with Morgellons don't even know they have it. The ones that break out and have really bad symptoms know they have it. Now, with all this information, we then need to think about sexual behavior. And why? Because that is the best way and easiest way for this infection to carry on and begin the cycle again. Body contact and fluid exchange. So we have to ask the question, are your sexual turn-ons your own? Is your sexual behavior really your free will? Or have you been rewired like the mice? Are women who suddenly turn into raging whores really acting as liberated girl bosses, or are they merely slaves to an infection that they are totally unaware of? An infection that has rewired their brains to help the infection itself propagate and find new hosts. You have to really analyze and look at all behavior. What about someone who suddenly becomes interested in oral sex and thinks about it constantly? Are they really just sexually liberated, or are they a slave with a rewired brain? What about anal sex? You know, as we know, that is the easiest way to spread a disease or a parasite or bacteria or fungus. If someone becomes obsessed with anal sex, is it really their own obsession, or are they being driven to do it by something else within? You have to ask these questions because it is very real. This crazy cat person syndrome and these funguses, they infect any warm-blooded creature and some cold-blooded creatures. And when you couple this with the fact that many Morgellons sufferers deal with zaps, vibrations, and other electrical sensations and symptoms, we are talking about a multi-pronged system that is not only operating from within, but also interacting with the frequencies that it is sensitized to. You know, as I stated earlier, people with this affliction can have brain fog and obsessive thoughts. They may even drink to self-medicate, which makes their behavior change. And this is where this video takes a turn, a big turn. I have been studying the Baumeister case for years. A week here, a week there, nothing for long periods of time. But there isn't a lot about the case that I don't know about as far as available information goes. Another strange coincidence in the Baumeister saga happened before he was known as a quote-unquote serial killer. Apparently, he and his son were out and watched a raccoon get sprayed over by a road paint truck. Herb took a Polaroid of it, and it ended up on the news. And I'm going to play you that video now.
The Indiana Department of Transportation maintains over 11,000 miles of roadway, and we paint those miles of roadway each year, and this is just an isolated incident that happened.
The drive-by striping, you know, or whatever.
Herb Baumeister of Carmel saw it all.
I said to my son, they're gonna hit that raccoon with the spray gun, and sure enough, they just striped right over its face and neck. You know, didn't even move it, you know, no effort to, you know, get it out of the way. So I happened to have a Polaroid with me, so I took a shot at the thing.
A raccoon, which met its demise on the yellow line, became one with the paint. The raccoon has since been removed. This is all that's left.
This was just, you know, the painter should have had a chalk line drawn around his career by state officials. There was no excuse for that. I mean, the poor thing deserved a better fate than that.
So just what is the explanation for this? For that, we went to the State Highway Department itself.
The Indiana Department of Transportation feels like this is a regrettable incident that did happen. This is not our standard procedure.
Well, they should have picked it up or moved it, I guess.
What a shame. It would have taken just a second to kick that thing or move it somehow out of the way. It deserved a better fate than that.
Now, there is some strangeness to this that I haven't heard people consider. Serial killers have an alleged fixation with animals and death. How exactly did this end up on the news? This was before the internet was a big thing, so Herb obviously didn't post it on his blog or something. He didn't have one. Did Herb call the news about his Polaroid photo? This really doesn't fit his, in the shadows personality or MO. How did this end up on television? But either way, I'm glad that it happened because Herb Baumeister in the sunlight opened a door to something that I never noticed before. Herb Baumeister is one of the few severe cases of Morgellons that I have seen that is actually pre-1999. And I'm guessing that this news clip was from 1993 or 1994. And Herb has a case of the covert Morgellons that I would expect to see on someone from 2005 to present. Every inch of his exposed skin is covered in it. So let's take a closer look. As we view this, let's keep a few of those symptoms that we talked about in mind. And those are what appears to be writing, strange markings that show up under certain lighting conditions, what appears to be like scar tissue that shows up under certain lighting conditions, and what I referred to as alligator skin, which was a darker pigmentation due to its layering, and that can resemble sun damage or an age spot. So let's check this out. As we look at him, this is the original photo. I haven't adjusted it at all. When you close up on the skin, you can see markings and markings and markings. Herb was not a burn victim. Here, you can actually see an X. Now, what I did was I adjusted the color on this photo a little bit. Let's open that one up and look at it. Okay, I just adjusted the color on this. You want to look at this on a bigger monitor so you can see it. But let's check it out. In front of his ear on his temple, you can see what looks like an X. These are just markings. They look like lettering, but I don't believe they really are lettering. Look here. You can see a squiggly line that forms almost like an M right there. You can see a sideways 3 here. His whole neck is filled with this stuff, and so is his face. And it's these angles that you can see it at. Now, this is intense Morgellons. Here you can see the hyperpigmentation or alligator skin here. It's all around here. And this is gnarly stuff. He is filled with it everywhere. This looks like a fungal infection. A very bad fungal infection. Now, when we look at old photos of Herb, he doesn't appear to have it. So here is an old photo before he became a serial killer. Another photo where you can see a little bit of hyperpigmentation on the right side of his face, but it's not that bad. Here, as a young guy, he doesn't have acne. These are not acne scars. And here, he looks fine. He's not filled with acne and scars. And there are many people that said he didn't have scars or marks on him. Here's another shot where he looks relatively normal. Now, under certain lighting conditions, like I said earlier, this shows up. Here's another still from the video clip where you can actually see it coming up his neck, and it almost looks like a 94 right there. Now, like I said, these aren't numbers, they just look like numbers or letters. Like I showed you earlier, it's very similar to what appears on wood or leaves. You will see this kind of stuff. Now, let's go back to this one again. This is clearly when he was living at Fox Hollow Farm, and he was active and killing, and he is severely infected. I haven't done anything to this photo except adjust the color a little bit to make it a little more obvious, but you can see it in the original shot, no problem. And he is covered in this stuff, covered in it, especially down at his neck. You can see these squiggly lines. I mean, that is not normal at all, especially for 1994, because what was normal then and what is normal now is completely different. You can see a mark here where it's hard to tell if that is a relatively healthy skin or what, but this almost looks like a sea creature on his neck, like a squid, right? Very strange looking, the whole thing. Now, let's talk about something here. Everybody started to come down with this after 2000. We know that Herb Baumeister was a closeted gay guy, right? Did this start in the gay community as a test, like HIV? You know, this video shows how it is visible in the sunlight at certain angles, like very visible. And to take this even further, Herb Baumeister didn't have burns, scars, or anything similar on his body. And I looked into that extensively, even digging up police interviews with Mark Goodyear, who happens to be one of Baumeister's sex partners who survived. Now let me show you that real quick. Here they are asking what Baumeister had. They asked him if he had glasses. No. Tattoos? No. None that I've seen at all. Any major scars? No, I don't think so. So somebody might try to say that's scarring. Well, the guy was having sex with him, and he didn't have scars that he could see. This shows up under certain lighting. Moles, no verbal response. Birthmarks, not that I've seen. So, you know, I've looked this up over and over, and no one said that he had scars or acne or anything. And you can tell in the old photos that he didn't. It's very, very easy to see. So let's get that out of the way. Goodyear, the guy that lived, the cops asked him, did you notice any scars? When I say scars, like fresh wounds that had been healing, something like that might look like a burn or something like that. No. So there you go. Now, shills will try to say that it's the camera. The camera's doing it. Here's the guy, he doesn't have it. Here's another guy who doesn't have it, but you could say that it's because he's in the shade, right? So let's find another one. Here is a woman from the same video clip, from the raccoon video clip. And she has none of it. Absolutely none of it. So it's not the camera. It's not anything to do with, video compression. This was from way before digital compression and all that. So, you have to realize that. Now, earlier I talked about this spreading through close proximity, touching, sex, etc. Let's take a look at Julie Baumeister, because even though that Herb was closeted gay, they lived with each other and they had 3 children together, all right? Let's look close at Julie. And what do you know? There's what looks like a sideways 3 and then another one right there. Let's adjust the color of this still shot and look at it again. This is from an A&E interview, and here are all the marks. Her chin is covered in it. And they look like 3s and, same kind of squiggly marks. Here, 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 all over here, all over here. And this went up her nose, up onto her forehead, here. It's all over, right? But other people are not covered in this. Here is a guy from the same documentary, the same old documentary, and he has absolutely nothing. Nothing on him at all that you can see. I adjusted the color, I did everything. There is nothing on him. So it goes to show it's not just the video, it's Herb Baumeister and the woman that he lived in close proximity with and had sex with. She has that too. Now, for those of you who understand the details and other concerning information about what people have termed Morgellons, you will find all of this just as curious as I do. I have heard of cases prior to 1999, but I have never seen a photo or a video of someone with these symptoms prior to the turn of the century. And I find it very curious that someone like Baumeister just happens to display the symptoms of someone with Morgellons back in the early 90s. And this someone went from being a family man to a person who allegedly strangled people in an obsessive compulsive manner and explained it that way. He was very obsessed with this. Now, it's strange because the cops asked Julie Baumeister, is there any time that Herb wouldn't be around? And she says there weren't many nights in our lives that he wasn't around. He was a good father. He would come home, we had dinner together. He wouldn't be out with people. I mean, he came home for dinner. We had dinner as a family. It says Old Ward Cleaver here. The only time he would normally go out would be on the weekend. He enjoyed going to Dr. Bob. When Dr. Bob would come to the Vogue, he was really intrigued with Dr. Bob. I don't know if you know who Dr. Bob is. And it says that she went with him most of the time to Dr. Bob. The only time she couldn't go was on Thursday nights when they couldn't get a babysitter in time. It's very strange. It's very strange. Now, the Goodyear guy, Mark Goodyear, who survived, was talking about how Baumeister was obsessed with this, like, strangulation thing, you know, erotic asphyxiation. And he's sitting here explaining it, saying, telling me about strangulation, neckties, how you can hang a rope from the ceiling and position yourself to where when you're on your toes you can breathe, and to get high or whatever off the strangulation you would drop to your heels. And he was telling me about this. I didn't see any of this equipment or anything like that. This was verbal only. So Julie Baumeister talks about how this guy was basically like Ward Cleaver. He was always around, right? And then Mark Goodyear, who survived, talks about how this guy was just like obsessed. You know, it's very strange, and then it's very strange to find this infection on somebody. And it is glaringly obvious that he has the infection, and it is also glaringly obvious that his wife has the infection as well. So it's not a coincidence that these marks are showing up on his face in this old news footage, right? Look at this. So I'm going to get more into this, but this is very, very strange, and that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.